Alright, I'm back on that EVS7000. It's now my machine because the fellow that owned it didn't want to spend a bunch of money on it. And I don't blame him because these machines here have notoriously been problematic with the take-up and supply hubs. They break. You cannot replace them. You cannot 3D print them because of how they're constructed. So he walked away from it. So I'm going to spend a bunch of time and see if I can get this thing to work properly. It could be an interesting one. I hope it's not going to be too long, but we'll see. Let's check it out. This is part 2 for the EVS7000. We're going to do the time-based corrector and probably deal with the display on this one. This is my machine now. When I talked to the owner, I informed him that, you know, we have a real problem with these the reel tables, and the first thing he asked was whether they can be 3D printed, and that's a hard no. They can't be 3D printed. Anybody that thinks they can has no idea how these are constructed. It's a two-piece unit. And I will find one from a machine. I don't want to pull it out of this one because it's not snapped at this point, and I don't want to risk breaking it, taking it out. But I will show you the hub if I haven't already. I think I probably have in other videos. I've showed the hub, but basically it's a two-piece hub, unlike the hubs used in camcorder. I couldn't find a camera, and I wasn't going to pull the hub out of this one just to show it to you. But this is kind of like a crude drawing, side view and base view. So this would be the hub that fits into the tape itself. The tape drops down over top of here. The hub is made up of two parts. There's a top and a bottom. This is a kind of a side view of the bottom. And of course this is the actual gear across here. Lost my train of thought. On the hub itself, again, it's got a magnet on it in the bottom here that sticks out. And that magnet's attracted to the metal disc. If you look at the base view, this is the top part of the hub that fits on the tape, and it's got some splines around it for the lock, like for the reel lock on the top part of of this. There's a round disc type magnet, and this piece fits over top of this piece. This is the one that the gear cracks on. This is the drive gear that's on the bottom. And this is the one that cracks, and when this is the one that meshes with the pendulum gear. Pendulum gear would kick into the side here and drive one spool or the other. It flips back and forth. This is the gear that cracks. But you've got a nylon center with a little bearing on it that fits over top of the pin. So on the chassis there's a pin that sits up, and this assembly is mounted on top of it. This whole assembly. So the pin would go through like that. Right into the tape hub. The spacing between these two is critical because it's the magnetic force from the top part of the hub versus this metal disc that determines how much torque, because this is the driving energy is going around onto this one here. This is what's turning. So this affects the torque. If it's too close, there's going to be too much torque and it's going to damage the tape. It's going to stretch the tape. If it's too low, then the tape's going to get slack and you're going to end up with an eaten tape. So this is very critical, this spacing here. Also, below this, on the actual deck itself, is a Hall effect sensor. The magnetic energy from the tape hub turning will pass through the metal disc and be picked up by the Hall effect sensor below. This is why you can't 3D print it. Everyone says, oh, just 3D print it. You can't. It's a nylon little bearing in the middle with a piece of steel and then a donut on it, like a tire, that's mounted onto this steel. It's a very, very thin, maybe 0.5 millimeter thick steel disc. And this outside edge was injection molded onto the steel. The whole thing was injection molded. They stamped out a piece of steel which had a hole punched in it. So a round piece of steel with a hole punched in it. And then they injection molded the plastic around that. That's how they produced it, with a hole in the middle for the bearing. And what happens is, over time, the plastic shrinks. Now, the plastic that shrinks in the middle is not going to be so much of an issue. I guess it could crack here on the steel pin. I've never seen that happen. But what does happen is this outside tire, this outside plastic tire that's got the teeth on it, it cracks. And then it opens up, and when it opens up, it stops rotating. That's what happens on these. 100% of them. Every single one I've seen has failed. My EVS5000 failed twice. My EVS7000 failed 3 times. Well, twice. 3 times actually. Because when it failed the first time, I got the parts. They used to be about $30 a piece from Sony. The last time I replaced one, I bought them when I went online. It was, what was the name of the company that took over for Sony? They bought all of Sony's parts. I'm trying to remember the name of the company, but it was 3 letters. I forget now, but they bought all the Sony parts after Sony shut down around, I guess it was around 2000. Sony shut down their parts department completely, and they sold off all their parts to a third party, which was their authorized service. And it was it PhD Electronics? I forget anyway. Anyway, all their parts were sold off, and one company in Ontario set up. They actually set up out here, but they moved back to basically took over Sony's central repair facility. They became the National Service Center for Sony, but they were no longer operated by Sony. They were an independent company. And I had to buy a remote control for my Sony DVD recorder with a hard drive that was given to me, and it was like $80 for the remote. This DVD recorder was given to me, but no remote control. And I ordered a spare because my EVS7000 had broken again. I just had my 5000, even though I wasn't using the 5000 much. And I inquired with them, and they had 2 left in stock, and the price of them had skyrocketed from like $30 a piece to about $65 a piece. So I bought the last 2 that they had, and I put one in my EVS7000, and a few years later, it broke again. So I put the last one in the EVS7000, and it has since cracked. So I swapped the one from my EVS5000, which had been replaced, and it was still okay. It hadn't broken. I think a lot of it has to do with how the units were stored, and whether they were stored in a heated or versus non-heated, and temperature fluctuations, I think, probably had something to do with the parts failing. But I've seen so many of them fail over the years. Like, I've probably changed these machines. First of all, they were not a real popular machine because they were expensive. This was like $3,500. I think $34.99 is what this machine sold for when it was new. So they were not a cheap machine, and they were typically used by people that wanted to do their own editing, or people that were doing production work using Hi8 because it had the digital audio capability. Anyway, didn't sell a lot of machines, but every single machine that we sold at the shop came back and had to have the gear, had to have that piece changed at some point after a few years. So it's not a matter of if they're going to break, it's when they're going to break. And because of that, the guy that owns this one decided to not spend a bunch of money to have the time-based corrector rebuilt. And I said, well, you know, in lieu of paying me for my trouble, my diagnostics on this to figure out what's wrong with it, you can just abandon the machine, and I will take it and keep it as a spare and for parts for mine. Because there's a lot of good parts on here, but I think I'll try and get this thing running, so I got a spare machine. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to replace the caps on here, and then we're going to go in and replace the caps that are on the main board, on the display board. I know it's caps on here. I know people have been saying, oh, it's caps on the display board. Yes, you're preaching to the choir, guys. I did a video 2 years ago on another EVS7000 that was brought in for service where the display was dead, and changed the capacitors on that. So I'm fully aware of what parts go bad on the display board. I've done a video on it, and I even linked it in the previous one. So you don't have to keep telling me. Everyone said, it's caps on the... Yes, I know. I know it's caps. I've done it. As same as I know it's caps on here. I've done this before. I've done probably 4 or 5 of these ones. And the EVS3000 time-based correctors. All these caps got to be changed. So that's what we're going to do. I went and got stock. I've got all the different values of caps I'm going to need. And we are going to get down and change out these caps and get this machine running. So let's get started. Like always, I'm going to use the cut and clip them off. Actually, you know, I could grab my hot air station and just use the hot air to remove these instead of cutting them. Let's grab the hot air station, do this one with hot air, and see how many parts I can blow off the board while I'm doing it. So let's remove this 1 microfarad first. Let's get my pliers on here to grab it, and we'll just heat it up and remove it. new 1 microfarad cap to replace that one is right here. It's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I think it's probably just as fast to cut them out, maybe faster, but I'll take a few of them out with a hot air gun just to show you guys how it's done. The next one will be a 47 microfarad, which is this one right next door to it. So let me get a 47 prep, and I'm not going to film this whole entire process. I'm just going to do a few of them on here, and then the rest of them I'll do off camera, just because I'll be here for a while doing this. So again, same process. Heat it up and just pick it off with pliers. Stick this one in here, and again, the rest of these I'm going to probably just cut them out, just because I'll show you how much faster it is. This is why I don't normally use the air station. I bought it so I could do some rework, but I haven't really ever used it for anything because, well, I've never needed it. So we'll just tin and go on and replace this one. Now, just by comparison, just to show you the difference in speed, if I take out this next one here, which is a, what is this one? I can't even read this one, it's so small. I had to get them at a different shop because they didn't have any 3.3s where I went for the initial one, so I had to go to a second shop to get the 3.3. So this one, I'll just cut this one out and say this is normally the way I do these because it's a lot faster just to go up to the cap and just go and take it out just like that. And then pick the other piece out with a small screwdriver or something. Just lift the top off, right, and then hold it down so you don't break the pins, don't tear the pins out, and just lift it and break the plastic. Now it's out of here. Now again, at this point, the hot air might make it a little more clean to lift this, but I find that just doing it with a screwdriver and a screwdriver to pick it off, or a pair of pliers, just heat it up and just lift it like that. Clean it off. So that's normally how I do it. So I'm going to put this one in, and then I'll take a break from the camera, and we'll replace a bunch of caps, and once we get them done, then I'll show you guys the results, because I don't need to bore you guys for the rest of the afternoon as I change out 35 or so caps on this board. And hopefully that's all that's wrong with this one, and I end up with a nice working EVS7000 to at least have as a spare. Okay, so that's 3 of them changed. I got a whole bunch to go. We'll pick this up in a little bit once I've got most of these done. Alright, that's how the board looks with all the caps mounted on here. Whether I'm going to be able to get the shield on here or not, that's another question. We'll see if it'll fit in here with all this crap mounted on the board, which is another concern. I may have to leave one of the shield covers off, which is not a big deal because I don't really give a goddamn if I'm compliant with FCC regulations as far as noise emitting devices go. I couldn't give a rat's ass whether it does or not. So we may have to leave that bottom cover off. We may have to leave both the covers off for that matter, but hey, it's my machine, so it really doesn't matter. But for those who think I really do need to be in compliance, that's about as shut as I'm going to be able to get this thing. I mean, it'll surround it, but But it should work. It should work. So let's put this back in the unit and see whether it gives me a picture. Other things I should check on here while I've got it apart before I even fire it up is we'll pull the front off and remove the cassette mechanism so that I can inspect. So I'm just going to pull this mechanism out. It unplugs. Well, there's some plugs in here to plug in, and this whole chassis should just lift out. I think I've got to pull the basket out first, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I pulled one of these apart, but let's start pulling screws and remove the cassette basket first. That pulls out as an assembly, and then I can lift the chassis out. So just got to pull a few screws here. There should be one more down here somewhere. Down over here, I think that's the last one. And then that lifts out. The connector's got to come apart here. And this one's got to come unplugged at the back. And this should just lift out. There's the chassis out now. This has been repaired. Somebody broke this. Look at that. Somebody broke that. That's been repaired once. I know that because my EVS7000 got broken. And that's how I got it. I got it cheap because somebody had been into it and they broke the board there. They didn't unplug this and they tried to lift it out, or they dropped it or something. But that board was cracked in exactly the same place that this one's been broken. Right there. Very common place for this one to break. Very, very common. So I'm just giving this a visual just to make sure that there's nothing that's loose. Make sure these plugs are all plugged in properly, which I took the ribbon off there just to check it. Just gonna give it a visual inspection and then throw it back together, as I don't think there's really anything wrong with this, but I just wanted to give it a once over, give that mode switch a shot of cleaner, which I did off camera, and we're gonna throw it back together and give it a try. Okay, the moment we've waited for. Is this thing gonna work? Well, that's a good sign. Play. It's working. Got a good picture on it too. Sound? Now that's the PCM sound that I dubbed in. I actually dubbed it using that other machine with the add-on PCM adapter. Let's switch over to the AFM mono sound. There's the AFM natural mono sound that was recorded when the video was shot. And if I mix them together, I can control the mix level. I can turn it off or I can mix it together. Let's try freeze frame. That works. Search forward. That works. Search backwards. That works. Jog dial. Reverse and forward. And frame by frame. Well, I would say that we're there. We're getting there. We're getting there. I don't have any display yet. One thing with the 8mm and the Hi8 format, well, all the 8mm, including Digital 8, and this is one of the reasons that Digital 8 was able to get away with actually even working is because of the way that the 8mm system threads. Can we, I guess that doesn't move, but if we look at where the tape guides are, you see the tape entering here and the tape is exiting over here, right? If I stop this, get out my magic marker, you can see actually where it stopped right here. Take a look at the heads, because there's 4 heads on here. Well, one of them's a flying erase head, but there's 3 video heads and one's a flying erase head. But so there's a head every 90 degrees. And if you look here, you'll see that this tape is just, this head would, well, if there was a head where this mark where the plug is, right? The 2 heads are side by side, but they're like one head is over here, one head is there, one head is there. This is the flying erase head. This is the A head and the B head. On a conventional VCR, let's take a look at this. On a conventional VCR, 180 degrees, that head would be making contact with the tape, and that head would be exiting contact with the tape. But on the 8mm system, the drum is actually wrapped greater than 180 degrees. So as you can see where the head starts, right here, and it goes all the way around to there. It's a pretty good representation. Your tape goes from here to there, but the video portion of it ends right there. If you're looking at this, thinking of this being the head, the video ends 180 degrees from where it begins. So if we go back to here, video starts there and it ends there, but the tape is in contact up to that position. Can we represent this? Yeah, maybe that will represent it right there. Now you see the 3 red spots, that's where the 3 heads are. But so you start your frame, the video starts right about there. When it makes contact with the head, the video ends there, but the head continues traveling all the way till it gets to here. It's this extra space between the point where the video frame ends and where the head ends contact with the tape. That is the section of tape where the digital audio for the PCM for this machine lives. But because of that extra contact, there's extra space on the tape. On a regular Hi8 or 8mm camera that does not have PCM audio, that ends. The signal ends there and nothing is recorded on, even though the head is still in contact with the tape until it gets to the exit guide, nothing is recorded there. That space is blank. That space is reserved for dubbing audio. It's also used for where they write the time code on machines that have rewritable time code. That is in that space too. But nothing else is normally written in that area. Maybe some ATF tracking signals, but typically nothing. That's a reserved area for the rewritable time code and for the PCM audio. But in the case of digital 8 recording, they use that entire continuum all the way down to where the tape ends. And that gives them an extra, I think on the 8mm format, 6mm of the tape width was used for writing video, and the remaining 2mm was used for the reserved area for PCM audio and for time code. And on digital 8, they use the entire 8mm tape width to record digital signals. That's how they were able to get away with it. And it was a wonderful system. One thing I didn't show you on this was, I hit the eject button there. This machine here, like all 8mm and Hi8, and all the beta machines as well. And this is an M loading, but 8mm also had a U loading. Normally the tape stays loaded and it just winds. Tape loaded. This machine has a high-speed rewind. If I press high-speed rewind, it doesn't work. That button doesn't work. Okay, the high-speed rewind button, maybe it will. There we go. Set to push it hard. It unlaces the tape. And, well, it's supposed to rewind the tape all the way back, but for some reason, it's trying to detect where it is. There it goes. It had to wind the tape back a bit so I could figure out where it was. and then it went into high-speed rewind. But it does rewind. This is really noisy. I'm surprised these gears haven't fallen apart. It rewinds back through most of the tape, and then it'll thread it back, and it will rewind the last section of tape at a slower rate. But that's these machines that had high-speed rewind. That's how they work. Anyway, we're going to work on this, get this display working, as I would kind of like to have. I don't need the display, right? I see the switch is broken here. It says snap. Yeah, I don't care about that. I actually don't really need the display because I got a remote control. I could use the on-screen display if I wanted to time a tape, but it's useful to have for seeing what's on a tape. So I think what I will do is I will pull this board out. It's on the bottom board. I'll pull the board out and we'll fix that. Well, after refreshing my memory, now I remember it was more than the capacitors. On the last one I had, it was actually a diode shorted as well. And I got to pull the front board out and get the board out of there and remove a shield. And there should be a couple caps on there that are bad, but in addition to that, it could very well be that the rectifier is gone. The other one, the board was all burnt up. If you guys remember, go back and look at it. It had a lot of damage. So we'll follow through on this one. I'm just going to pop the bottom off. I got to take the bottom cover off. It's a bunch of arrow mark screws. The screws are removed. The bottom will just lift off like this. And I gotta have to kind of let this thing sit on its side. Don't want to damage any of these ribbon cables. I gotta get this out of here. Good enough. Okay. I gotta take these ones out. So if you forgot how to open this, you can pry it open from this side. And here is the display board. Our problem is going to be under this shield. Just unplug these two cables and get this out of the way. Oh, wonderful. That's falling apart now too. That's got to be re-glued. Oh, wonderful! All the little... shit. All the little light pipes for all the lights fall out. Boy. Okay, I guess I gotta put all these back in place. I guess they just sit in here to bring the light up from the LEDs. From all the stupid LEDs that light up on here. For now, it'll be held in place with Scotch tape. Just so that the buttons all don't fall out again when I turn it over on the side. So this thing's had multiple problems. It had capacitor in the power supply that was bad. It had a whole whack of caps inside the time-based corrector that was bad. It's going to have some caps in this circuit that's bad. I'll pop off this shield cover and see if this one is as bad as the last one. A good chance it's going to be as bad. Well, at least this one's not all burnt to crap like the last one was. CO206 if I remember, and 205 or 204. We'll pull the rest of the shield off here and get in there and change them. So inside this power supply there are actually 4 electrolytics, and this one's a solid cap. These ones are going to be bad. These two for sure. That one there's probably also bad. Let's just check the ESR with the good old ESR meter, and this will tell us right at a glance which ones are shot and which ones aren't. Alright, so this one's measuring up. This one's measuring 0.28, and it is a 220. So 220 at 35 volts should be like 0.17. It's bad. This one here, C205, well, C205 is completely open, so we know that that one's definitely bad. And C204 is measuring 3 ohms. C204 is a 470. That's also bad. So those ones for sure. What about this other little one down here? This other little one might be okay. 15. Okay, but what size is it? What is that one? It might be bad too. It's a 10 at 50. 10 at 50 is, yeah, it's bad. So we're going to change those ones out. All 4 of those electrolytics are going to get changed, and that should hopefully get this display working. I happen to have all the caps that I need in stock, so let's change them. I had a nice Hecco desoldering station down at the shop today when I was picking up parts. I thought, it would be kind of a nice addition to my bench, but when I saw it was $500, I thought, nah, I don't think so. $500 for something that I can use solder work for. It's a 470. Here's my 470. 470. There we go. So no, I didn't buy it because yeah, not that kind of money. Sorry, Charlie. A little bit too rich for my blood, as the saying goes. You'd have to do a lot of part swapping to justify that. I guess if I was doing a full recap on 20 amplifiers a week, then maybe something like that could be justified. But I'm not. I don't do this for a living, so I couldn't justify that kind of money. If it was $100, then yeah, I might have bought it, because I could have used it, but always come in handy. But for what that cost, no, not a chance in hell. Oh, I think the trace lifted there, didn't it? We'll have to deal with that. There, I think I got it. Okay, that's got the 4 caps replaced. This shield is going to fit back on here. Now, one of these caps is a little bit taller than the other, so it may not go back on. But again, this is something that I'm really not that worried about. Oh, it will fit. Maybe it will. Oh yeah, it's going to fit. I got room. Okay. I'm going to tack it, but I'm not going to put the bottom cover on it first. We'll test it first. I'll just tack this in place just to hold it down. Let's see whether this thing lights up or not. Okay, well, I saw some light, but it went out. Okay, so we still have a problem with the display. When it first applied power, I had light momentarily. We'll just depower it and see what happens. So let's unplug it. You see? I think it's a connection problem. If I just kind of poke around on the back here, it brightens up. So I think I gotta just, see? There's a connection on here somewhere. So I'm just gonna just pop this out once again and just take a close look. It's probably from some of the corrosion from those caps, because they leaked a bit, right? So I have a sneaking suspicion that there's probably some corrosion that got into the board here, and it's just causing a connection problem. I'm just going to take a close look and maybe go over a few of the other ones and just look to see if I can see anything that, because one of these caps had been, you can see here, look, this one here, right? This one was leaking and it's gotten into the board. So it could be some of the pass-through connectors, but definitely, I mean, we got some light now. It's just not right. Yeah, the display's not working properly, but the audio display is working. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. The audio display is working. It's got on-screen display. I mean, it could be something else with the chip as well, right? It's got voltage, but it's not displaying correctly. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Because it could be, I mean, it's got power. It's not flickering anymore when I touch the board. So it's got power, but it's not quite right. But I have a feeling that it's something else wrong. Could be it's not going to be the display itself, but it could be the drive IC has got a problem as well. I mean, everything's lighting up. So we got other problems other than the power supply on this. And again, it's my machine, so I'm not really that concerned if the display works or not. It'd be nice so I could tell where you are on the tape, right, for timing a tape. But this is basically a parts machine, and to use if I need a machine that's got PCM sound. Not going to be putting this into service every day. And again, it didn't cost me anything other than the cost of the parts to repair it. So I'm going to put the bottom shield back on, and I'm going to throw this one together, because as far as I'm concerned, for a machine for myself, this is acceptable. I've got the remote, I didn't get the remote from this one, but I have the remote for this machine because I have this machine. So it's not a problem. I can bring up the on-screen display if I want to see how much tape, like where I am on the tape. It's got outputs that will display the output on the screen. So I think I'm going to throw this together and just leave it as it is. The reasons I don't want to mess with this anymore is this cable. When I plug this one in, this is separating on the top here, and some of the strands are actually peeling back. I don't want to touch this thing, because if I unplug this again, chances are the copper down here, it's just glued down, right? It's like a flexible PC. It's so old, it's separating. I don't want to touch it. I'm scared if I do anything to this, it's going to damage it. All right, now we'll just pop the bottom back on. It just goes on like that. Okay, I got the unit back together. You can actually almost read the display, but we have another problem, and that problem is there's PCM sound on here, and I'm not able to select it. Right? Picture's playing okay. That's some creases in the tape that's going by there, you can see. But that's the AFM soundtrack. That's not the PCM soundtrack. What has happened is that ribbon cable, one of the, I'm just checking my alignment too. I put the scope on it here. You can see the creases going by. There's some creases on this tape. So that's what's causing that. I gotta go back into the bottom of this again. One of those pins that connect between the display board and the main board, actually between the front board here and the display board, there's that cable that loops around. One of those is obviously not making a connection, and it's for this PCM switch. So I got to pull the bottom off it yet again and see what's going on with that. I should have left it well enough alone. I should have left it with the broken display. At least the PCM sound played. Now I've created another problem that I have to try to resolve. Exactly where the problem is going to be. It's going to be in this connector right down here. You can see that these are in not good shape. This is what carries the signals from the switchboard, which is here. This is the switchboard here, right? That connector. That switchboard gets put through to this one. And the pins on this side look okay. But let's take a look at the ones on the other side. Guaranteed they are going to be coming apart. I can I just know it. Yep. There's one right there. There's a couple of them that are not quite right. You can see them. I don't know how the heck I can secure those back down either. I hate these. I really hate these ribbon connectors. They are the worst invention ever. The backing is coming off. That's going to be where the fault is, right there. You can just see it. But I don't know how I'm going to go about trying to fix that thing. Try to smooth that down a bit so that it'll go through. So it'll go in. Okay, let's try this again. I put that connector back together as carefully as I could. Let's just see whether I get PCM sound. Fingers crossed. Yes, I got it. Okay. Standard audio and mix. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Man, I've spent too much time on this. I've been on this all day, right? I went and got the parts this morning. It's now like 6:30 at night, and this is all I've worked on all day, is to get this stupid machine working. Now, if only I could get it to stop staying stereo on the screen. I think if I hit the edit button, that'll go away. There we go. For some reason, it kicked into stereo there, but when edit is on, it doesn't show that. Right? If you turn the edit off, when you kick into stereo, it'll tell you you're in stereo. If you turn the edit mode on, if I bump the head and get it to drop stereo for a sec, I'm just going to double check that alignment. Now that I got to screw the bottom in again. I haven't put the screws in, but it's going to double check the alignment of the video output, or the heads, alignment of the tape path, I should say. It looks good. Looks good. That's dropouts clogging ahead momentarily, but yeah, output looks pretty flat to me. I'm going to say this is a success. The display is, well, it's kind of working. You can kind of read it. The audio display works. The level meters work. So I'm going to call it a day on this one. I think that this one's probably in about as good a shape as it's going to get. I think mine's easier to flip that down to clean the head. This one's kind of hard. I can just take mine and do that on the other one I've got and flip that against the head to clean it while it's running. This one here won't do it. Anyway, yeah, that's a EVS7000. One of the most expensive consumer VCRs ever made. I think this and the DHR1000 were probably up there. No, this was probably, I think, even more money. I think the DHR1000 was only around $2,000 or so, or a little more. When this one was on the market, it was like $34.99. Most expensive Hi8 machine that Sony ever made. As you can see, it's got a good picture for regular 8mm. I'm going to dig up a Hi8 tape and I'll make a quick test recording. Here's someone's old wedding I did years and years ago in Hi8. This was, I guess, my secondary camera. Or was this the primary camera? It might have been the primary camera for that matter. DNR standard, DNR max, and yeah, this would have been recorded on EVW300. Pretty sure this is just the preliminary shots I was getting before everything got going. So let's just see if there's any sound. Probably no sound on this. Standard would have the soundtrack. The PCM soundtrack would have had wireless mics on, which weren't turned on at this point. Because I recorded on PCM track, I recorded the I had microphones, like wireless mics. So this was just getting some shots. I was going to do a little test recording on this. Say this was done so many years ago. I forgot I still had it. I just found a Hi8 tape to work with, so this will suffice. And I think I've already used this before for testing stuff because there was a recording that was made with a camera that obviously wasn't working. We're just going to record this, hit record, and we'll record this for, I'll record this for a few minutes, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to plug in my MP3 player, and we'll dub some PCM sound onto the tape here, so I can verify that it's dubbing PCM and everything is working. So I'll just rewind the tape and play it back, and there's the recording I just made. So I'm just going to grab my audio source and plug it in and do a PCM sound dub. Okay, how we do this is we put it into pause it. I'm going to hit the audio dub button. If I can remember where the heck it is. Where is audio dub on this thing? Audio dub. There we go. I think I hit the audio dub button. Is it lighting up? Can I light it up? There we go. Now it's going to light up. Okay. And when I release the pause, I can start the music. And now the reason you're seeing the black bar there is it's muting the video as it's doing the dub, which is totally normal. So I'll let this play for a bit, and we'll dub the music in, and then verify that it plays back and that I can select either the PCM track or the hi-fi stereo track. That was the strength of this machine, and like that other one that's just the regular Video 8, you could dub the sound in, but this one had hi-fi stereo as well as PCM stereo. This had both, so 4 soundtracks, whereas the other old one that I've got has a mono soundtrack plus you could dub in PCM, which is the same as that EVW300. It had a mono AFM track and you could dub in stereo. Okay, I can stop that there because it's over, and we'll rewind the tape back and play this back. Now we'll initially hear the initial soundtrack until I hit the dub button. So there's the original sound, and now here's the dub sound. And I can, of course, can switch. I can get the original sound, I can have original sound and mix it in. That was nice because you could have music dubbed, bring the background sound up, fade it out, etc. So this is working. I'm happy. All right, I think I'm going to end this now. All the features are working of this deck. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.